like to welcome everyone to the latest edition of Repair's Realm. Today we're going to talk about preparation for vehicle refinishing, and this is something that's a little bit different than some of the episodes we've done lately. A little bit more back to the fundamentals, and that's one of the things that we're preparing this episode, that shops a lot of times they forget some of those fundamental things that leads to all kinds of process failures, rework, and all these problems. So we thought we would just touch on this topic here and really talk about some of the little nuances of preparing the vehicle for a refinish. So I'm Scott Van Hooley. I am the manager of the RTS team here at I-CAR. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to TJ.
Hi, hello. I'm TJ O'Rourke. I'm one of the subject matter experts here at I-CAR. I joined about a year ago. Been doing late model collision work for over a decade, and restoration work before that for about another decade. And Jeff?
I'm Jeff Poole, subject matter expert manager at I-CAR.
All right, so with us today we have a few people from Saint-Gobain. And Kevin, why don't you start us off with your introduction?
Okay, great. Thanks, Scott. I'm Kevin Cregan, National Accounts Manager with Saint-Gobain Abrasives and the RSG Group. And with me today is Jeff Bell and David Galvin. I'll let each of them introduce themselves. Jeff, why don't you start us off?
Thanks, Kevin. Jeff Bell, work on the National Accounts team, account manager. Also work on the strategic accounts team, working with the MSOs and the paint companies as well. David?
Thanks, Jeff. Hey, I'm Dave Galvin. I'm an automotive application technician with Saint-Gobain, and I specialize in the practical application of our products and how they're used in the field.
So in my introduction, I mentioned the RSG Group. So what is the RSG Group? Well, believe it or not, the RSG Group is almost 10 years old now. It's basically a group of leading manufacturers, the best-in-class manufacturers that were all brought together under one umbrella by Saint-Gobain to assist the industry, to assist shops in improving their processes and increasing profitability across the board. And today, we're really excited to share with you what we think are some important concepts in the refinish process. We like to refer to it as, starting clean, staying clean, and finishing clean. On to the next slide there, if you would. You might be asking yourself, who are the companies or what are the companies associated with the RSG Group? Well, they are our own brands of the Norton Automotive, Carborundum Abrasives, Frekla, Polishes and Compounds, SolarGuard Window Tints, and our partner brands are American Tape, DeVelvis Automotive Refinishing, Parker Lord Fuser Adhesives, and Hutchins Tools, Pro Finishers, etc. in the industry. So I think at one time we looked at the combined experience of the partnered brands, and it was nearly 300 years experience in collision repair. So we're excited to present to you today the information that you're about to see. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Scott.
All right, so we'll kick off this next video here, but just want to remind everyone watching live that if you have questions, feel free to enter them in the chat. And once we get through some of the content, we'll take some time to answer some of those questions. So if you want to queue up the first video, we'll start there.
David, thanks for coming out here today and telling us a little bit about the importance of dust extraction. Now, I know shops have been using it for a long time. They're going away from built-in dust extraction units to more portable units. What are some of the benefits of having a portable dust extraction unit?
Well, just that it's portable. You could set them up whichever way you'd like to fit your stall the best. Some of these units, like this one, you could use multiple people per unit. There's the possibilities are endless on what you could use it for. You could move it around the shop, obviously, and use it in different areas of the shop. Less maintenance, less cost up front.
I could see a huge savings in cost. Also, benefits of health and keeping the sandpaper length longer. So what particular with this unit is great?
So that's actually a great point about the sandpaper. The longevity of your sandpaper will be extended by using the vac system. This vac system in particular, again, you could use with multiple technicians. There's different lengths of hoses you could get for it. So you could, if you're working on a big RV, if you're in a big RV shop, you could get longer hoses. Obviously, the longer the hose, it changes the efficiency of the system. So you want to configure it to your work area and your shop. This system, one of the large benefits of this system is the options and tools you could use. This is set up with the Hutchins tools, but you can put whatever vac ready DA you want on it, which is a big benefit of that.
That is nice.
We also have these blocks that you can put on. These are flexible vacuum blocks for manual sanding. The system, high efficiency HEPA filter, a lot of storage. We could hook our tools anywhere on it. You can configure it in any way you like. Store your sandpaper, all your replacement bags, everything on this system.
It does look very nice. There's more storage in here. Do you have to use a certain sandpaper with this system?
You do. And we have several orientations of sandpaper. So we have our multi-hole cyclonic, and then we have our mesh options. Both of these will come in a block option as well. The goal is to have as much surface area with grit on it as possible, at the same time allowing passageways for the dust to come through. So how do you do that? The more holes you put in it, the less grit you'll have on it. So with the mesh paper, you have the full sheet is covered with grit, but being a mesh, it allows the dust to run through it.
I could see that. Well, we did a little talking about it. Let's get over to these fenders and see it in action.
Once we got our repair area and primer, first step I like to take is applying dry guide coat. It shows your highs and lows, your defects. In later steps, it'll show you your deep sand scratches, and in bodywork, it'll show you your pinholes and all the other defects that come along with that. You can even start to see the defects in the primer as we apply the guide coat. After we get our guide coat on, I like to start sanding with 320 block paper. This machine has the capability to manual sand. Of course, we're going to use the multi-hole cyclonic paper. Has the holes in it, allows the dust to come through it.
Are there any personal protective equipment requirements while using this?
Of course, yes. Even though this extracts most of the dust, we still want to wear our N95 or better mask, as well as safety glasses.
Okay, let's see it in action.
M is for manual. That's what you're going to use when you're using your manual sanding blocks. A is for automatic. That's what you're going to use when you're using pneumatic powered tools. So I've now switched the machine to auto. We're going to now DA sand to remove the 320 straight scratch that we put in the panel. First, though, I'm going to apply some guide coat. This will help us identify those straight scratches so that we can know when we have them removed.
David, I heard the vacuum make some noise, like a chugging noise. Is it struggling?
No, that actually is to purge the air filter. Prolongs the life of the air filter, less need to change it as frequently.
Okay. Now, we have another fender just like this one. Can we see what the difference is without the vacuum?
Absolutely, I think that's a great idea.
As I suspected, a little bit more dust on that piece of plastic,
Yeah, I'd say so. There's
and quite a bit more on the panel yet too.
a bit more dust in the air, on the panel, and on the ground.
I could definitely see a difference just in that little test there.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that video demonstrated pretty clearly that, you know, that's one of the things, just having a vacuum system, some way of keeping it clean, just helps keep the shop in general cleaner, let alone the repair. You know, I think there's a lot of times that people overlook that. We're busy, we're running around, and we don't really think about cleaning the shop. But overall, the dirtier the shop is, the more dirt and your finishes you're going to have, more contamination for all different materials getting in where they shouldn't be.
Could potentially end up with, I'll say, more dirt getting into the customer's vehicle and their interiors. And you know, that's something that some customers, a lot of customers, are very particular about.
So we already got a couple questions. Like I said earlier, if you have questions, make sure you put them in the chat live, and we'll get them answered during the episode here. So first question is, what is the best grit to use to start sanding the primer, and what should you finish sanding the primer with?
So when it comes to that process, there is some different variations. Everybody kind of has their own technique and tricks, but I think it's safe to say kind of an industry standard would be 320 grit is where you start with blocking your primer, especially primer over a repaired area. You know, that is a primer surfacer. It is part of the panel shaping process. So you want to have somewhat coarse, sharp grit so you can help shape that panel. Continue and definitely start with the block, so that way it ensures that it's straight. As far as finishing the panel, bring it up to 400, 600. Your surrounding area definitely in 600, and you're ready for base coat.
All right, next question we have, do I have to buy new DAs to use the Norton Vac Rack?
That's a huge benefit of the Norton Vac Rack is that it's compatible with any DA that has a typical air port and a typical vacuum hose port. Of course, the Hutchins DAs are excellent DAs, and it's the one that we like to sell with the vacuum. But any DA with a air port and a vacuum port will work on that system.
Okay, all right. And then the next question we have, how often do I have to empty the Norton Vac Rack, or what is the capacity of that vacuum system?
Of course, I mean that depends on the shop, right? The volume that shop deals with. I have friends in Tennessee, for example, that have a small shop, and they will go a year or more without changing a bag. Then there's those larger shops that have a high volume, let's say, of used cars that are going through their shop. And they'll change the bag every 6 months. So it all depends on your volume as far as the bag goes. And the filter itself, it's a self-cleaning filter, so it lasts quite a long time. It just depends on, again, the same thing. It depends on the volume of your location.
Okay, and then there's a follow-up to that. When do you know you need to empty the machine, and is there any indicators that would tell you when it needs to be emptied out?
Yeah, there is an indicator on the machine. It's a little LED light that lights up, and we'll show you when to change it, or it'll at least notify you to check it, and at that point you should probably change it.
Okay. And then another question came in. What kind of sandpaper is the mesh? Is it aluminum oxide or a ceramic?
Well, we actually have, the one in the video is a ceramic, but we do have an aluminum oxide version of it. So a little more cost effective. So it just depends on, what is best suited for you at your shop and into what you choose.
Okay. So it doesn't look like we have any more questions on that segment. If you do have them, we can always circle back to that after the next video that we're going to queue up here. So watch that, and then we'll have some more questions and answers and conversations afterwards.
Jeff, one of the goals is to keep dirt out of the paint job. What are some tips and tricks to do such that?
So, good question. A lot of times the way you mask the car up, making sure you backtake the jams, getting your plastic tucked in behind your masking paper, all those things help contribute to getting a clean, dust-free paint job.
And there's also aperture tape or foam tape to help with that. Why don't we do a little masking on this and then kind of walk our viewers through some of that.
Okay, so we take our aperture tape. And we want to run it down the side of the part of the car that moves. Make sure it's stuck good. And that creates a nice seal between the two panels, so you don't get a hard line where you want to run your masking tape down. You don't get some type of hard line. You get a nice soft edge through there where the overspray bleeds in. From that point, we'd grab some masking paper.
Okay, yeah, I'll let you throw some
Okay.
on and I'll help you with the big stuff.
Ready?
Yep.
And we'll lay a long one across the top here. Couple pieces of tape to hold it.
A little right there.
And I had one more place at this end. Now we'd be ready for our plastic to cover the rest of the car.
Now I know some painters will put plastic right up to the panel. Is the paper absolutely needed?
It's personal preference. Some guys will use 1.5 or 2 inch tape around all the borders and then bring their plastic over the car and run the plastic right to the tape. Some guys will tuck the plastic in behind their 12 inch and tape it down that way.
All right, let's get the plastic on it.
Okay? Got your razor blade?
Yep. You need more on that end?
Maybe a little bit. Good. We can bring it right down over it. Take our razor blade and trim around it. Thank you. You could tape it around like this and kind of seal it off and then fold it over. So you can either wad your paper up and stick it in, or you can fold it over. Again, there's not a right or a wrong. It's whichever way works best for you in your situation. And now we're ready to go in the booth.
Jeff, you've done a great job getting the vehicle masked up. What are some of the last steps before it's ready for paint?
So once we have the car in, it's all covered with plastic. We're going to pre-clean the car with a wax-free grease remover one more time. Any contaminants that might have come off our hands or maxing the car up. Once that's ready, we're going to tack it off, and then we're going to do one final wipe with a pre-saturated alcohol wipe, the wipe out, which will take away static electricity and leave you with one final good clean finish.
All right, let's get to it.
Okay? And again, this is just a final one more time. We've already pre-cleaned it, before we masked it.
Well, you can never have a panel too clean, is that correct?
I agree. You can clean them and clean them and clean them. We're trying to get a nice clean paint job and eliminate, as many defects as possible and get a nice clean factory looking finish. We'll go ahead and tack it off. Perfect.
And the last step was?
So then the last step that was probably introduced 10 years ago is we have these wipe outs that are a pre-saturated alcohol wipe. And this is a laser cut towel that meters the release of the product. And this is the same thing they do at the OEM level. It's the final clean to eliminate static electricity. So you just, one final wipe, it evaporates, takes off any final contaminants, and eliminates any type of static electricity before you spray. Because static electricity is going to create dirt and specks in your paint job. We've cleaned this car several times. If you might have missed something, you can look back on this towel and see. In this case, it's pretty clean, so fairly confident we're going to get a pretty clean paint job out of this. And we are ready to spray. Spray our base coat. After our base coat and our coverage, we'll go to our clear coat, and we're good to go.
All right, so another great segment. We have a couple questions coming in already. So when first cleaning the surface to be painted, do you clean with a wax and grease remover only? Or what are the steps that we need to do there?
I think in an ideal situation, you'd probably, when the vehicle came in for repairs, wash down the whole vehicle with soap and water first. That'll take care of some of the contaminants that are not able to be dissolved by a solvent.
And our vehicle that we're using here is a Wisconsin vehicle that has seen the roads, and it did get a bath. It got washed beforehand.
Yeah, we don't get anything called salt up here, do we? So next question that came in, why is it so important to eliminate the static electricity on a surface to be painted? Because, you know, we did a lot of steps here. What's the point behind all of that?
Okay, excuse me. So everything we do with prepping a car for painting creates static electricity. We're sanding the car, we're blowing it off with air, we're tacking it off, and everything we do creates static. Static attracts dirt. So by the final prep and going to the wipe out, the pre-saturated alcohol wipe, that helps reduce static electricity, and hopefully we get a cleaner paint job by doing that.
Yeah, static electricity can not only attract dirt, but even on some bumper covers, metallic paint, the way the metallic lays in the paint could create a modeling effect as well.
Okay. Well, and I know there's also a lot of different tools, so they use anti-static wipes and things like that, but there's also anti-static guns, and so there's so many different processes that can be used out there. It's just a matter of what works best for your workflow in your facility. Do you have, next question that came in, do you have any recommendation or tips for masking between the front door and the fender to keep overspray out of that area?
Yeah, the aperture tape works really well if you can get in behind there. Sometimes you have to do that with the door open. Make sure you can get that aperture tape down between the seam or the jamb between the fender and the door before you close it. In some cases, if you can't get the aperture tape in there, then you can get in there with your masking tape, 1.5 or 2 inch, tape it on the back side of the door, and then when you close the door, that will seal that gap off as well. So, like we said earlier, there's not really a right or wrong. You just got to kind of figure out what works best for you in that situation when you're masking up the car.
All right. And next question we had come in. In the video, we talked about the personal preference to use masking paper as a border or not. Do I need to worry about paint flaking off of the plastic if I only use the plastic?
With ours, you do not. It has a chemical on it that keeps overspray from flaking off of it. So if the base coat sticks to the plastic and when you come back with your clear coat, it won't blow the base coat off into your wet clear coat. There are some products out there that you have to watch and make sure, and that stands true for your masking paper as well. You want to make sure you use a good quality masking paper so you don't have that same effect.
Is that plastic treated on both sides?
No, there's only the one side, and it says sprayable side or spray the side only or something like that's mentioned on it.
Okay.
And I had the pleasure of talking to Jeff a little bit more when he was here. The paper has a writing or a check on it, so you don't need to add a spray out card to make sure you have complete hiding. It's kind of built in, so having that next to the panel when you're painting, it just kind of covers, you got enough base coat on there.
Okay. Another question came in. Do you recommend doing most of the masking outside of the booth?
I do. Excuse me. I do. The spray booth is made for spraying, not for prepping or sanding or taping. So I always like to tape everything up as much as you can. Cover the plastic on it like we did. You can roll the car in the booth, drop the plastic down and finish up. But again, the spray booth is made for spraying, not for masking, in my opinion.
Next question is, what type of sanding scuffing was done to the door panels before the masking started?
So those were all prepped with 2000 grit. We had a small nick on the edge, and being silver, you're going to have to blend that anyways. So I think 1500, and then we went over with 2000 that we're going to blend out, spot the color, and then blend the complete panel.
All right, and the next question is kind of getting back to the plastic and paper. Do you need to completely seal the seam of the paper to the plastic, or can you just tack it up there with a couple pieces of tape along the top of the paper?
I prefer to tape it up solid, the whole seam. I know it's a little bit of tape you're going to use, but that's way better than having overspray get in behind there and get on the glass or on the other painted surface, and then you got to clean overspray off a car. So in my opinion, I'd rather see a guy tape it off solid for that reason, just to don't create any overspray on the rest of the car that you're not repairing.
And looks like the final question we have right now is, how did you mask off the bottom of the doors?
So really all we did is when the doors were open, we took a long piece of that 12-inch paper and went about 4 or 5 inches up inside the bottom of the door along the rocker, taped it along the inside of the rocker, and then closed the door. And that's going to seal off everything below there. You know, that door is going to create a seal to that rocker, and that paper is going to be sealed in between the two.
And I think it really depends on the weather strip seal design and things like that. In some cases, it may be required to remove certain seals and things like that that are going to be in close proximity so that we can get an adequate back tape of that area.
And I think too that with all the different vehicles, we have to use all of the tips and tricks and ideas to mask these vehicles off, because they're all so different. How, like you said, the door seals are, how they meet up. It always seems like you have to come up with a new way to mask a car to prevent that overspray. Got another question that came in. Want to know your thoughts on using the anti-static blow gun. Does it help? Does it not? Can you do both?
Personally, I don't think you can do too much. I mean, anything you can do to help get a clean paint job is time saved on their end. I've used the anti-stat guns. I've used the anti-stat wipeouts. They all have their purpose. As we mentioned earlier, you got to find a system that works for you. I think the key is you find the system that works and you stick with that system. You know, you're doing the same thing over and over. You tend to be consistent in what you're doing and get good quality finishes that way.
Okay. And looks like we got another question in here. Where can I find part numbers for these products?
So all of our part numbers for our products would be available either through our catalogs or on our website. You can also get a hold of your local distributor where you get your tape and your paint and your sandpaper, and they can help you with that stuff as well.
Okay. So I've noticed most of the conversations refinish oriented, and that was kind of the target for this. But I think about the other body work that gets done, sanding a body filler and things like that, and the opportunities with the dust collection systems to help minimize some of that dirt and dust and things that are in the air, in the environment, in the shop, potentially getting in the customer's vehicle, helping to reduce those opportunities.
Well, and I know a number of years ago we did some work with the Aluminum Association, and just around dust in general. A lot of the aluminum clean rooms and things like that were required because they were worried about the aluminum dust being explosive. But when we did that research with them, we found out that body dust, aluminum dust, steel dust in enough quantities, fine enough, is an explosion hazard. So, you know, every once in a while, a feed mill will burn because of the dust from all the grains and things like that. Aluminum factories can have that same problem. So general shop cleanliness is important just to keep everybody safe as well and not have some kind of a catastrophic event. While pretty rare, you don't want to win that lottery ticket, right? Yep. Your favorite saying, Jeff. It looks like that's all the questions we have right now. If you have any other questions after the video has been published, you can send any of those questions to repairsrealm@i-car.com. And if you have any future ideas for different Repair Realm videos you'd like to see, you can also send those comments in there. And with that, we'll sign off. Guys, thanks for coming from Saint-Gobain, and everybody have a great day.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.